Welcome to the Linguava podcast, The Invisible Profession, where we give you tools, tips, and resources in medical interpretation and translation that help bring to life our industry and ultimately help improve health outcomes for the limited English proficient communities. Welcome, everyone. We're super excited today to have a very, very special guest with us today. Someone who has been in the industry for a long time and is going to be able to bring a lot of knowledge and experience to the table about what it takes to be a great translator, what it takes to make the right decisions when who to work with for your language service provider. And we're really excited to have Veronika on the show today. She's a translation industry veteran with more than 14 years of experience working from project management side, account management, and more recently over the last 4 to 5 years in new business development. She's worked with Fortune 500 companies, really helping them expand their global footprint. So I am super excited to welcome Veronika to the podcast. Welcome, Veronika.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, or would it be appropriate to also call you a polyglot? Can we say that? Because you do speak.
That would definitely
you speak five languages. I believe.
So that would definitely be a compliment. Thank you, David. I do not consider myself a polyglot, only because when I think of the idea of a polyglot, it's definitely a person who is fluent in multiple languages. Mm-hmm. I probably would just say I'm bilingual. I do have a basic understanding of multiple languages, but I'm not necessarily fluent or would consider myself anywhere near fluent.
I think you're being a little humble, but we'll keep calling you a polyglot. But tell the audience a little bit today. And again, you're speaking with translation organizations, translators, interpreters, organizations that work with translation services today. And we'd love to hear how you got involved in the translation industry.
Yeah, so, when I think about it, my initial gut reaction is always to say, it was by a chance. I applied for a job and got a job in the translation industry, but I think my whole life I've been kind of led to this industry, probably subconsciously or unknowingly led towards this industry. My father spoke, I think, 7 languages.
Wow.
And
where are you from originally?
I'm from the Czech Republic. Okay. So my father's Czech, and he spoke many languages, and learning new languages and knowing about other cultures has always been part of me growing up. So my parents enrolled me in a school with expanded language education. So in the 3rd grade, I started learning English. Then in the 5th grade, they added German. And then in the 7th grade, they added Spanish. So usually, typically in schools, you only take on one language, the foreign language you learn. So from a very young age, I was exposed to different languages, just learning different languages. So I think there was always something there that led me towards this industry.
The seed was planted, sounds like.
Yes, I think so.
That's cool. And then you got started in the industry, and then initially you started as a project manager, as a PM. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So in 2006, I felt it was about the time I get a serious job. I started doing these, little jobs here and there, and then just started my career. And I applied for a job, for a project manager job. And it's funny because back then I didn't even know something like the translation industry existed. It was more like, okay, project manager, I can definitely do that. But I had no idea of the industry or that something like that actually really existed. And I think, while the industry has grown so much over the years, a lot of people still wouldn't even know that something like this, like that our
Yeah,
industry
that's very,
exists.
very true. I
It's
hear that. I
still
hear that all
very
the time.
it's still very new. So yeah, but I started in project management and grew, into project management, vendor management. So I dealt with onboarding new vendors, new linguists, and then it was a natural transition to move towards account management and
Yeah,
business development and sales.
yeah.
So
And now here you are. And I didn't
yeah.
mention this at the beginning, but Veronica also does work with Linguava as our account executive, and we're very, very thrilled and blessed to have Veronica on the team. And so, Veronica, from your perspective, I think the audience would love to hear what it takes to make a great project manager, what it makes to make a great PM. PMs are a lot of times behind the scenes, and
hmm
they're expert multitaskers. And what does it really take to separate the good from the great PMs?
So, and as you said, multitasking is probably one major aspect of the job. So, the more obvious would definitely be, the ability to multitask and handle stress and be good with time management and
Hmm.
times. But over the years, I've also noticed some of the, most successful project management managers are people who are very good at working with people and being open to other cultures and
Mm,
understanding other cultures. As a project manager, you work with linguists from all over the world, from different backgrounds who may not
right.
have understanding of your background, and so you have to be able to adapt to knowing how to communicate with people from different backgrounds. So that's one side of it, but then the other side is you communicate with clients
Yeah.
too. And it could be anyone from the administrative assistant to even sometimes a CEO of a startup. So it's just the ability to be able to
Hmm.
communicate with people from different backgrounds, different job roles. Um, and then the second one I would say is flexibility and being able to learn on the spot and always be willing to learn.
Yeah.
Technology is constantly improving, and so as
Hmm.
a manager, you need to be willing to constantly learn new tools, learn new techniques. Um, don't say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, I think
the
about
people
think
who
about
are
that too, because with technology is
Mhm. It
constantly
is.
improving, advancing, changing. So
Mhm.
how do project managers stay on top of all of the advancements and all the opportunities that are available?
Yeah, I think it's just having a natural curiosity to constantly learn, to not be okay
Hmm.
with this is how we've always done it.
Right.
Um, as um, just looking for ways to improve on current processes and looking for
Hmm.
ways of making things better and being open to just doing the research of,
Yeah.
okay, this is what I'm doing now. I don't think this is very efficient. How can I make this better or more efficient and easier for everyone? Um,
Yeah. And I think there's
to,
also the partnership and communication with the LSP there as
hmm
well of making sure that we're being innovative together, and like you
right.
said, utilizing the best processes and the most up
hmm
to date processes as well, to best serve the clients, right?
Right. Yes. 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 Yeah. I
And oh,
say
go ahead.
being a sorry, David.
No, no, you're good.
Like Ed, as they say, just not saying no. Like no, we've always done it this way, but me being more of a yes person. Like yes, we can do this. We can figure
Hmm.
it out. So yeah.
Yeah. So this morning I was reading on Slater Slater's newsletter, and
hmm
they were talking about uh, a the Thai Majesty apparently was really upset because they their Facebook there in Thailand, they had like their countrywide Facebook, that it was the king's birthday, and they did some sort of a write up about the king's birthday, and then they did auto translate. It
Mm.
was from English to Thai, and they and apparently completely botched it. It was so offensive to them that they didn't even want to share the original, the
Mm-hmm.
mistranslation that occurred. Took it down. They wrote a letter to Facebook. They banned auto translation, I guess in Thailand because of it. So I was really curious to what the message said, but it was so bad
Mm-hmm.
that they banned the auto translation there. So it leads me to the next question too, which is just about where companies fail when it comes to getting their documents, their information, their websites, their social
Mm-hmm.
media translated. So from your experience, what do you see as where companies are getting it wrong?
Yeah, I think it's this idea that um, a machine can do it. That translation is so easy. A machine like Google Translate or Facebook Auto Translate can do it. Um, Whereas it's not so simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Machines, no matter how advanced the technology is, they can not understand. Still, they cannot understand context. Or
Yeah.
as mentioned with the example of the Thai prince. I mean, they don't have a cultural understanding or the sensitivity of certain issues, or the specific wordage that needs to be used. And also is the idea that translation is a commodity, that it's all about price, and that
Mm-hmm.
it's the last. Most companies, unfortunately, translation is the last thing that they plan
Yeah.
for, and it's the last thing that is budgeted for. So a lot of companies, because they don't plan for it, because it's the last thing, um, don't really have budget for it, and so they're looking for ways of
Yeah.
saving money. And the obvious is usually to just do it with Google.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
you use automatic translation, and that's where it goes wrong. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you've seen other examples all over the
Oh,
internet with some hilarious translation fails, or just companies getting it.
yeah. There are so many. I know you wrote an article
I
recently. It was a
did.
beautiful article you published in
Thank you.
LinkedIn, all about translation fails. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I've always, I'm always curious to see what other companies are doing, and always looking for just the fun side of our industry, right? How can I share a story? How can I show clients that you should not be using automatic translations and just using real life examples? So I'm always on the search for that. And usually, if you do a little search, you can always find, usually it's like signs or
Mm-hmm.
things on menus being translated improperly and
Oh
incorrectly.
gosh, yeah.
But it's funny because, I mean, there's some really big name companies that thought they could, save on translation and skip a step and use an automated tool, or just use one person who's not really familiar with the target country, and just do it that
Mm-hmm.
way, and not have it verified by anyone living in the target country where they want to use the document. And so then all these, hilarious mistranslations or mislocalization comes from. So one of my favorite examples of a large big name company is Pepsi. And in the 60s, late 60s, they had a slogan that said "Come alive," and they translated, and nobody really verified it. It wasn't localized for the Chinese market. They brought it to the Chinese market,
Mm-hmm.
and it said something like, "Pepsi will bring your ancestors back from the grave." So it's just examples like these. And
Oh,
like I said, there's
yeah.
so many of them. Some of them even, turned quite inappropriate for these large companies,
Yeah.
and ended up being quite an embarrassment. So if
And
you
that's
have,
just from companies
yeah,
cutting corners,
exactly, yeah.
not working with a
Mm-hmm.
professional language service provider to get their translation done, and just doing
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah, just
Google Translate or Auto Translate. Yeah, you
yeah.
think about the amount of money that you spend with any campaign or marketing campaign, then to only have to go to try and retract, and all the millions of dollars you have to spend to try and rectify and correct that.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. My colleagues, some of my friends in the localization industry,
Hmm.
we have this thing, save money now, pay more later. So that's an example of, saving money
Yeah.
now. It's going to cost you so much more later on trying to fix it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the way I like to look at it is like the difference between price and costs,
hmm
right?
hmm
You can always find a lower price out there. The price per the rate per word. Um, you can find really cheap, pennies per word, but ultimately,
hmm
what's that going to cost you in the long run
right,
if that is a mistranslation,
hmm
and
right.
it's going to be a lot more. What's the difference between, we hear these terms, translation,
Hmm.
localization, transcreation? Um, can you kind of give us a quick
Yeah,
description on what those three are and how they're different?
right. So translation, those that basically means, uh, converting the text from one language to another.
Hmm.
Or for factual, you not really changing anything in the source. Basically, whatever the source says, that's exactly what the translation is going to say too, which works, more for, just factual, types of documents,
Hmm.
for like forms or, FAQs
Yeah.
or annuals, just very factual documents. Now, localization is a step
Hmm.
further, and it adapts the translation to be linguistically and culturally appropriate for the target market. So it takes into consideration, the product names, um, the layout of the document. Sometimes even graphics need to be changed. Um, it it even takes into consideration the religion of the target market. So it's just a step further of, it's not just a translation, you're adapting the translation to fit the target market.
To fit that
Um,
culture. Yeah.
to be
Okay.
culturally, appropriate. Yeah. Now, transcreation is, slightly different, and that's, you see more of that. It's mostly for motivational, types of documents like slogans,
Hmm.
campaigns, um, headlines, um,
Hmm.
or even, I would say, jokes or puns.
Hmm.
And so in this case, you're actually completely changing, or modifying the text to better resonate with the speaker in a different country. So, for example, with, let's say, jokes, right, or puns
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
play on words, work in one language, but if you just translate it, it's not really going to be funny or really make sense in another language or another country. So with transcreation, um, you're adapting and modifying the message, um, to resonate with the audience in the other language. And same with, slogans, marketing campaigns, advertising. This is probably the best, example of where transcreation will play an
Yeah.
important role. You just don't want to just translate the text.
Hmm.
You want to go a step further. Um, Transcreation plays more on the emotional, um, aspect of what the reader is reading.
Another question that that I hear sometimes that comes up, and I'm sure that you do as well, is if you're asking an organization about, what's your process for getting your documents and or website or manuals translated, and they respond with, well, we have Bob who speaks a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
Spanish or a little bit of Russian or et cetera, that just helps with that. So we just call on them when we need an interpreter, or when we need our documents translated, or just
Mm-hmm.
an update on our website or our social media. So what is your advice to I know that you probably cringe like I do when I hear that, but what is your response to someone
Mm-hmm.
when they say, oh yeah, we have someone in our office that actually that speaks Thai, or that and we have them translate.
So it plays on two very interesting topics, and it's just, I think the most obvious would be speaking a language does not necessarily make a person a translator. So unless, as you said, unless Bob is really truly a translator and that's his experience and he was hired for that specific purpose, which in many cases, it's just something they're being asked to do on top of the many, many other
Right.
tasks that
Yeah.
they're supposed to be doing during the day. So it's not only just that ethical aspect of asking somebody to do something for free, a service that usually companies charge for. Now you're
Right.
asking your employee to do for free. But it's also the idea that just because you speak a language does not necessarily make you a translator, right? It's translators have degrees in translation.
Mm-hmm.
They, they specialize in a specific subject. So they're very familiar with the terminology used. They have all the tools that makes their process easier. Um, and also, working with an agency, for example, instead of a translator, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
working with an agency instead of an internal employee, agencies have QA steps in
Yeah.
place. So if you're using only one person in house who, speaks the language, what if there's a typo that the spell check doesn't catch?
Yeah.
And then, on the front page of your manual, it's going to be printed 1,000 copies of, what then? Like, who's going to catch it if that's the only person you go to? So, agencies that work with qualified linguists, we have
Yeah.
QA checks in place. Um, Also, flexibility, right? So, agencies, we work with a wide network of linguists. And so you're not relying on only one person. What if Bob gets sick? What if
Mm-hmm.
he goes on vacation? Who
Yeah.
translates the document then?
Right.
And in the worst cases, I don't like to bring this up too often, but it does happen. And as I said, what if there's a big mistake on the front page of your huge manual,
Yeah.
printed 1,000 times? Agencies have liability insurance. So if anything like that, I mean, worst case scenario, it's actually, I've never seen it happen in the past 14 years that I've worked for translation agencies, but in the case it does, or should it ever happen, um, translation companies
Yeah.
have liability insurance to cover
Yeah.
for
Yep. There's an omissions
like
insurance.
that.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so just working with that one person, again, I speak Czech and English. I'm bilingual, but I'm not a translator. I tried that long time ago during my college years, helping out with translation, and it's really difficult. And it's definitely a special skill that translators work on, and not only that, but they have this additional knowledge of other topics too that they specialize in, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah. It's super interesting. Well, I've seen it. I remember one time back when I did a lot more Spanish interpretation. I was interpreting at a clinic, and the doctor had spent the doctor that was working with the patient had spent, obviously some time maybe in Mexico or something like that, a short period of time, 6 months or so. Spoke a little bit of Spanish, and so when they came in, they said, "Yeah, don't worry, I got this. I'll let you know if I need you." So, all right, sounds good. And then when they say that, you never know like what's actually going to come out of their mouth, and it was very poor grammar. The patient's like looking at me the whole time, but the doctor insisted. They were very, very confident in their Spanish speaking abilities, and it was pretty bad. And the patient was not understanding and had to keep going to me throughout the appointment. And at the end, I followed up and spoke with the organization or the supervisor from that organization to basically report that, hey, this doctor should not be utilizing their Spanish like this, and they should be relying on professionally trained interpreters. And the person said, "Oh gosh, thank you so much for letting us know. We should probably stop having them translate our documents as well."
Oh gosh.
So here they were not only interpreting, they were also translating the documents, which I can only imagine what those look like because their grammar was atrocious. Atrocious. That's such a difficult word. Their grammar was very bad.
Yeah, gosh, but that's the thing, a lot of people, as we talked about earlier, they just see it as, oh yeah, I speak the language, I can do it.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's something definitely to be aware of. So one other question for you, Veronika, is where you see the industry headed. We talked earlier about just how fast technology is changing, and you can't have a conversation about translation without addressing the fast changing with technology. Where does Google Translate come into play with that? What about machine translation? And so from your experience and perspective, where do you see the industry headed as it pertains to technology?
I think it's definitely gonna grow. We're already seeing it with, as you said, machine translation. I think neural machine translation is gonna be more widely used. But again, speaking about if it can replace human translators, I don't think it. And I actually, to be entirely honest, I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's definitely the automatic translation or neural machine translation is definitely going to help speed up the process and help translators, be more efficient and then do more in less time. It's not going to replace them. Only because, as we've seen from the examples, the localization fails examples, machines still cannot understand the context or cultural differences or religious differences. So yeah, they're not going to replace human time soon.
Continue to
especially when it comes to
continue to make improvements and make things faster and more efficient. But you don't see it completely replacing.
No, not anytime soon.
Yeah, I know. Who knows? It's so hard to know where we can only imagine. What things will look like in a few years from now. It's so hard to know what things will look like in 7 to 10 years, right? With technology changing so fast.
Yeah, I think it's going to help. I'm not. I know a lot of people are really against it. I'm actually, for our industry, I think it's only going to help. I think it's going to help make things more efficient and faster and allow us to do more and help more people. I don't think it's a bad thing, and I don't think human translators, they're here to stay.
So, for all the translators listening, I'm sure they're excited to hear that as well. And we're coming up here to the end. But what on that note too, what advice would you give to a translator that is maybe just getting started in the industry, a difficult industry to get started in? So what would be your advice for someone getting started?
I would say I would tell them to find a topic they want to specialize in. Since this is their career of choice and it's what they're be doing probably for the rest of their lives, um, speaking the other language or having that degree in translation is just the first step. You know the language, you know the theory of translation, you know how to do it, but specializing or finding that niche for yourself is where you can really excel. So just look at what you like. What you're interested. What are the topics that you like to read about that you're interested in? Do you like health and wellness? Are you interested in those topics? Or are you more technical, and are you really into learning about machines and how they're built and how they work? Or are you into sports? So just figure out what you really like, because it is going to be something that you're going to be translating for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so it has, it should be, I think, it should be something that you enjoy.
Something that you can get excited about, get up in the morning.
Yeah. Right. So find what it is other than translation that you really enjoy, and just learn as much as you can about that specific industry, that specific topic. Read books on that topic too, and just get as much knowledge as possible in both languages. So if you're translating from English into Spanish, acquire that knowledge in both languages, so you're familiar with the specific terminology. And I think that can go really a long way, as opposed to just being a generic or like general translator trying to do everything, right? Specializing, I think, is where you can really excel if you specialize in a specific area, like Linguava in medical translation, right?
There's lots of opportunity there. Well, this was an excellent opportunity to learn from you, Veronika. We thank you for your time with us all today. I'm sure that the audience all gained a lot from getting a chance to listen to you, and tuning in all the way from Chicago, where you're at right now. And thank you all for tuning in as well. This was great to have you joining our episode. And if you liked the episode and want to hear more, go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't already. And feel free to share this with your language interpretation translation community. We would love to continue to get content like this out, and we'd love to hear from you as well. So what type of topics would you like to hear, or what type of questions would you like us to tackle in this podcast? This podcast is for you, and we want to make sure that we're talking about the right questions and topics that you have in mind. So thank you again for being a part of the community, and we will see you very soon on the next one. Veronika, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, David.